Hello viewers, we are going to discuss India-US relations in the context of recent visit of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi to Washington and many more places in United States of America. You know, today India-US relation is more relevant. It is the relations for global partnership, strategic partnership since 2005. India is the largest democracy. Whatever the Americans claim, it is the oldest democracy. So it is the bond between the largest and oldest democracy in the new world order in the 21st century. There is a lot of point of convergence and divergence between India and the US relations. So I focused on why this relation is indispensable. India and US is the natural partner in the era of globalizations, in the era of multilateralisms. So that's why this relations is important today. If you look at the newspapers recently, Indian Prime Minister Modi visited in June, the last month. He also addressed Indian diaspora. So, whatever the warm welcome by the President of United States and other dignitaries, it's matter for the degree of cooperations, degree of relations between the two democracy in 21st century. If you look at why and when the importance of these relations, especially the post 1991, because before 1991 it was the era of Cold War, where the two superpowers, one side the United States of America, second side the Soviet Unions, they confronted each other on the basis of democracy, on the basis of their ideology, military strength, economic strength, and many more things. The geopolitics is there, but after the disintegration of the Soviet Union, it is the only superpower, that is the United States of America. So let's see what was the significance, what is the relevant, what was the outcomes of the recent visit of Indian Prime Minister to the United States there in the last month. We know the rolling out the red carpet for the Indian Prime Minister during this is the state visit. You know, the US President Joseph Biden underlined his belief that India-US partnership will be one of the defining relationship of the 21st century. One of the he has a strong remark and belief the Vice President during the Obama administrations. Earlier, Joe Biden was the Vice President during the President Obama. So this phase of relations mirrored one used by the United States President Barack Obama as that the state banquet for the former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh in 2009. They quote unquote say, one of the defining partnership of 21st century, denoting the consistent strengthening of ties over the 2 decades of the century. If you look at this visit, the achievement is the landmark achievements. They led the celebrations of International Day of Yoga at United Nations headquarters and hold bilateral talks with the President Joe Biden in Washington. There is a lot of public programs of the Indian Prime Minister there. It started with the 21st June, the day of international that recognition by as Day of International Yoga Day in the world by the world community. So that's why it was the significance, it was the new achievements for the Indian diplomats, Indian foreign policy, how the yoga recognized as international day for world community. It is the recognized by the world community what is the importance, the relevance of yoga in the today's life in the era of globalizations. It is the Indian practices. India's spreading wellness, health for all, good health for all through the yoga. What is the benefits, importance of the yoga? That's why United Nations recognized yoga as international day through the more than 160 over 63 countries. If we look at these relations, bilateral strategic partnership, or we say the natural partnership, there is a framework, the timelines, they decide the whole strategic cooperations in the context of the bilateral, in the context of the multilateral, in the era of multilateralisms, after the, especially the post-Cold War. But recent upcoming G20 meetings in India, there is a chances for new outcomes in the world order, the directions, whatever the India's position today, it is recognized by the major power of the world. So institutions, strategic cooperations, military, economic and diplomacy, that's matter. If you look at India's and US, both societies believe in democracy. There is a liberty, equality, justice, freedom of expressions in our society. We always ensure the liberty in the society. It also remarked by the whole design of the Indian constitutions, liberty, equality, and fraternity in the society. In the similar fashions, American constitutions also value these values of democracy. So these ideologies matter for our cooperations. Yes, the third point, if you go through the interest, yeah, there is a national interest for the both countries. India is leading power as emerging power. United States is a superpower. The post 1991, whatever their hegemony is there, his hegemony or look at the after the Second World War, it is the United Nations who laid foundation for many more democratic institutions for the welfare of the global cooperations in the context of democracy and defense and other things, regional security. If you look at the interest, regional and global security, we know after the global war or terrorism, it is the India who unconditionally support the United States initiative, the war against the global terrorism in Afghanistan. After we are moving towards very close to in the context of regional security and global security. If you look at the recent last 5 years, like 7 years or 10 years, yes, the India and US relationship is growing. The Quad is one of the landmark milestone for cooperations. Second is the Indo-Pacific partnership. So we can say India, US, Americans relations have been become increasingly multifaceted, covering cooperation in areas such as trade, defense, security, education, science, technology, civil nuclear energy, space, technology, and applications, environment and health. President Joe Biden and Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, today affirmed a vision of the United States and the India among the closest partner in the world. As a partnership for democracy looking into 21st century with hope, ambitions and confidence. India is non-NATO major ally of United States in 21st century. So that's why, quote unquote, the Indian Prime Minister as well as the American President remarked the conditions, the trajectory of relations with hope, ambition, and confidence today. India US comprehensive global and strategic partnership is anchored in a new level of trust and mutual understanding. It is also enriched by the warm bonds of family, friendship, link our countries together. Work together, the dynamic of Indian diaspora, greater strategic partnership, partially because growing interest by American companies in India alternate to in China, for the expansion in for expansion in Asia. You know, India has emerging principal source of foreign direct investment as well as Americans' favorite destiny for the manufacturing. India has joined United States, Japan, Australia in the Quad. It is the quadrilateral security forums with the Japan and Australia as a grouping seeking counter China increasingly assertive behavior in Indo-Pacific region. Together, we will build an open and free Indo-Pacific region, a stronger, diverse partnership that advance aspiration of the people of United States and the people of India for the bright and prosperous future, along with the human rights, shared principle of democracy, freedom, and rule of law. Our cooperation will serve the global good as work through the range of multilateral and regional groupings to contribute to free, open, inclusive, resilient Indo-Pacific in the era of 21st century, era of multilateralism. New regionalism is also there. So this is the idea, this is the pillar who is strengthening the bilateral cooperations between India and the United States today. If you look at what is the main center of focus or whatever the importance of United States in the India's foreign policy. In the vice versa, any can ask what is the importance of India in American foreign policy? Why Americans are ready to cooperate, ready to work together with India? Lot of causes, lot of important events that they are the dynamics, they change the framework of design of cooperations, comprehensive cooperations between the two global power. Whatever the status of United States is the superpower along with the leading power, India today in the emerging power. So if you look at the India's foreign policy, what is the importance of the US is there. Why India want to closer tie with United States? If you go through the theoretical practices, theoretical idea, theoretical framework, we can say no state can strive alone without having relation with the states. Foreign policy can be defined as a set of principles, decisions means adopted followed by the no securing defined goal of national interest during the course in relations with the other nations. Yes, the primary factors, primary determinant of the enhancing cooperation, that is the national interest of any country's foreign policy. If you look at the foreign policy of India, there is no doubt there is a goal of national interest secure through the exercise of national power in international relations. We know India is a democratic country since 1947, in which the world's biggest electoral openly and free exercise for fundamental rights to choose the leader. Its population is the largest in the world after China, and its economy is now the fifth largest in the world, and vast diaspora wild huge influence especially in the American business. We know the Indian diaspora is one of the largest population in United States. So that's why American business are invested in here with the history of close relations. But we know the new dynamics of foreign policy. If we go through the historical view, we know there is one factor, the Soviet Union. We have a natural, or we can say the strategic partnership with the Soviet Union till Cold War, but the scenario has changed. New economic reforms, the policy has started, initiated by the government of India. But that Russia is a factor today in the US India relations. But India tactfully, dynamically manages US as well as Russia for the in enhancing cooperations. With the history of close relation with the Moscow, Soviet Union, or today the Russia, long and sometimes contested border with the China, strategic locations, is the highly volatile neighborhood. India is destined to be critical player in the geopolitics for decade to come. So this is the core values. This is the core interest of the India. Why? What is the importance of India in the world politics in the context of the geopolitics? There's a two, three factors is there. The China, second strategic location of India, and then whatever we can say the volatile neighborhood. If you look at the conditions in Afghanistan, Pakistan, many more. If you go through the all neighborhood of India, so that's matter for the emergence of India as a critical player in the context of the geopolitics today. Yes, India successfully managed its foreign policy determinants, components along with all major powers. We derive the framework of the cooperations with all major powers including Russia, China, France, UK, US, Italy, Sweden, Asian countries, ASEAN, Central Asian countries, Shanghai cooperations, many more countries. So it is the achievement of Indian diplomacy. We managed the goals of the foreign policy, national interest, national power, diplomacy, international business through the trajectory of the foreign policy today. What about the economic diplomacy? There is just defense diplomacy is there, but India successfully managed the goals of the foreign policy today. If you look at what is the why India is attracting place or favorite destination for the major powers, this is the question today. Anybody can ask why India is the favorite destination for the FDI or security cooperation with all major powers. We know there is there is a treaty with the Soviet Unions right now, the Russia, the post Putin's, then France, UK, Germany, ASEAN countries. But one thing is there is a competition with the India and the China. Geostrategic rivalry. Second point, if you look at what will be the futures, the next 10 years, the geopolitics of India, the importance of the geopolitics of Asia as well the Europe. Yes, European Union is there, but India is emerging the major and important player of geopolitics of the 21st century. If you look at why India attract today the favorite destination, one initiative by the government of India, the Make in India. If you look at what is the advantage of India, why the peoples, why the businessmen, why the major powers, global powers favoring India. We know the India's conditions, situation today. You say it is the third largest economy, GDP in the PPP, the fast growing growth in the world, the 7.5, 7.6 foreign reserve currency, it is the $366.7 billion. Second largest road network, internet users around 462 millions. It is the second largest in the world. Population is there. If you look at 15 to 64, 767 million. Many more railway network, many more things is there that decide the whole approach, the favors, the interest of the major powers in the India. Yes, India is the fast growing economy, huge consumer market, sustainable GDP growth, upward mobility, skilled work, non-skilled work, inclusion of banks, many more things. The political, social, and economic condition is changing right now. The post 1991, it is the impact of 1991 economic reforms after the beginning of new phase of wave of globalizations. So India is moving towards that trajectory to becoming the economic superpower, the hub of the FDI in the world. Major FDI, if somebody asks where is the source of, what is the source and where the destination of the major powers FDI in India, we say the defense manufacturing, food processing, telecommunications, agriculture, pharmaceuticals, civil aviation, space, private security agency, railways, insurance and pension, medical devices, single brand retails. So these are the emerging sectors where there is a FDI flow from across the world. Second side of the story, if somebody asks what is the importance of India in American foreign policy, why the superpower moving towards regional and global partnership, strategic partnership with India in the context of economic, diplomacy, security, defense, and military cooperations. In May, there was the bilateral air exercises between the India and the US in the West Bengal and Agra Air Force stations. If you look at the trajectory of United States foreign policy, yes, this is the foreign policy of a democratic superpower. As a superpower, United States is committed to protecting freedoms, human rights across the world. But second things, if you look at the trajectory of the foreign policy, internationalisms. This is the policy of promoting international cooperations, the American foreign policy after the Second World War. Establishment of the new institutions in the democratic practices, the cultures, the open society, freedoms, the matter for American foreign policy. So overall, we can say the plan for dealing with the other nations is called the foreign policy president direct the foreign policy of the United States. If you look at the primary goals of United States foreign policy, especially the national security, ability to keep countries safe from the attack and other things. We know there was a latest attack on land of United States. It was the 9/11 terror attacks. We know that the implication of the 9/11 terror attacks in New York and many more things. The terrorisms become one of the evils for the open society. Yes, there is some essential questions. Many more can ask what should be the goal of US foreign policy to be and what the best way to achieve these goals. What role should be the US play in the world today? How does the political ideology influences US foreign policy? What is the image of the US in the world today and how does the image influence American foreign policy? So we know that after the Second World War, it is the only superpower surviving during the Cold War and today. So whatever the legacy of the United States as a democratic country, it's matter for open society and free society across the world. So promotion of democracy, helping the democratic country, it is the one of the determinant that defined and designed the bilateral cooperation with India. So there is a lot of questions after the post 91, after the 9/11's attack. What should be the role of US in the world? Today, during the pandemic, we know the US is the only global superpower. They claimed since the end of the Cold War, the global system has been unipolar. Yeah, most of the theoretical practices, most of the theorists of the international relations, they say it is the unipolar world. But there were also chances, the second side of the story is the world moving towards the multipolars after the Cold War. So, whatever the Americans' policies, decision making makers, and the think tanks claims, US has been world only superpower economically, militarily, and culturally. So, the rest of the things we'll discuss after this break.
Hello viewers. This MA program in Environmental and Occupational Health focuses on the relationship between people and their environment and fosters safe and healthy communities. And this is of utmost importance. This program is an MA in Environmental and Occupational Health. The type of the program is a master's program and the medium of instruction will be in English. The duration of the program will be a minimum of 2 years and a maximum of 4 years. The target group will be a graduation from any discipline. Mainly the professionals working in environmental and occupational sector and non-governmental organizations are welcome to join. Doctors, nurses, paramedical graduates and employees can join the course. Employees from the Central Pollution Control Board, civil servants of the state and central governments, faculty, researchers and students in universities, research organizations and colleges will find this program very interesting. Graduates aspiring to pursue a career in environmental management, occupational health and safety, industrial health and safety will also find this program of useful relevance. The job opportunities for this program is tremendous. They can work as environmental health and safety specialist, occupational health and safety specialist in various organizations, HSE coordinator and protection officers. They can also work as worksite wellness coordinators, public administration and safety professionals. They can also work as industrial hygienists and ergonomists in the various organizations. Then the safety and environmental health managers, toxicologists, health and safety engineering specializations are also very important. The objectives of this program include the following. They will discuss the impact of the environmental hazards on human health. Then they will describe the policies, laws, standards and the measurement techniques and applications in different occupational setups. They will also help to develop mitigation strategies to contain and manage environmental and occupational hazards for positive health. Finally, they will also help to exhibit the knowledge and skills that are needed to improve the environmental sustainability of human health systems. First year courses of the MA program include Introduction to Environmental Health, Environmental and Occupational Hazards, Environmental Law and Management, Environmental Toxicology, Occupational Health and Safety Project Work, Environmental Impact Assessment for Environmental Health, Health Care, Agriculture and Allied Sector, Industrial Sector. The second year MA courses include Gender Issues in Work, Employment and Productivity, Disaster Management, Sustainable Natural Resource Management, Safety Philosophy and Principles of Accident Prevention, Disaster Medicine and Global Climate Change, Fundamentals of Mental Health, Gender Issues in Agriculture, Rural Livelihoods and Natural Resource Management, Globalization, Environment and Development, and Introduction to Geoinformatics. The instructional system that is followed at IGNOU includes the multimedia approach, the self-learning materials, audio-video programs, assignments, counseling sessions, project work, teleconferencing and interactive radio counseling are conducted time to time every month for the benefit of the learners. The self-instructional material is available on the EMPC-IGNOU website and also the printed material. The assignments are also freely available and they can be downloaded from the IGNOU website on the students zone. After successful completion of the first year, the learners can get a postgraduate diploma with an exit option, and the term and examination is held twice a year in June as well as in December. The admission link for the program is ignouadmission.samarth.edu.in. For all queries and support, the program coordinators Professor B. Rupini, Dr. Sushmita Bhaskar and Professor Ruchika Cuba from the School of Interdisciplinary and Transdisciplinary Studies and School of Health Sciences. I hope you find this course very informative and we invite you to join for this course. Thank you.
Hello viewers, we discuss about the India-US relations, what are the factors influence these cooperations, the bilateral cooperation, multilateral cooperations. In that way, right now we are going to discuss US role in the world. What should be the role of US the post 1991 after the end of the Cold War? Why India is important, significant for US foreign policy? What is the role of US and what kind of the role played by the India in the Asia as well the world for the peaceful coexistence. If you look at American perspectives, whatever they think about the world, especially the Asia, they claim themselves we are the superpower, sole superpower after the global after the end of the Cold War. That is the unipolar. US has been world's only superpower, economically, military, and an economic superpower. US is the world's richest nation with the world's largest economy, no doubt. Ranked first, total GDP is the around 20% GDP of the world. Top 10 economies, India is also the fifth largest economy. If you look at the military superpower, that's matter for the Americans' hegemony across the world. We know US is the powerful nations, strongest military in terms of other nations, but India is a growing military power along with the economic power. If you look at the US has global military presence, this is the red mark. Identify the hot spots, the military presence of the US since Cold War, or we can say the post Cold War footprint, US military footprint in the world. Yes, whatever the goals, how to serve the interest of the American foreign policy through the alliances in Asia as well as Europe. But Europe, there is a NATO is there for the Americans foreign policy, but in Asia there is no such alliances. So the non-NATO alliances, NATO is there. So the protect national security, democracy, stability, and the human rights, many more things is there. The agenda of US foreign policy. If you look at this symbol, that recognize the symbol of United States. That is the liberty, the Statue of Liberty. Global attitude, fear and resentment of the US power, disdain of unilateral actions, use of force, opposition to Bush doctrine, pre-emptive war. US self-interested criticized the global is poverty, climate change, many more. These pictures represent many things about the Americans' agenda, American foreign policies today. But if you look at whatever the idea, the, 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 the link between the India's and the US since the Nehru, Prime Minister Nehru to Narendra Modi, and then US President, uh, if you look at Roosevelt to today, Joe Biden, George W. Bush, he was the most powerful president in 2001. Say, a distinctly American internationalism will help make the world not just for the safer, but the better. We are called to defend the hopes of the all mankind. The George W. Bush, in the context of making the case for war against the Iraq, he has given reference about the hopes of mankind. The America's manifest destiny or duty is to become an internationalism police power and to repel any wrong in the interest of humanity at large. It is the American thinking. American highest calling was the patrol the globe better the condition of the things in the other nations. Theodore Roosevelt, the former president before 1947. Look at the pictures, how the Americans celebrate the end of the Cold War. 9th November 1989, the border separating Western from Eastern Germany, the fall of Berlin Wall, the fall of Berlin Wall, always used to symbol for end of the Cold War. So this matter, what was the relations, the pattern of the relation between India's since 1946 and after the India's gets the independence from the British rule. But unfortunately, India was divided into two parts on the basis of religion. One is the India. Today, India, geographically, second part is the Pakistan. It was the British plan to divide the British India, whatever the hidden agenda is there. But look at whatever the stature of India today, status of India and conditions, the foreign policy, the matters, the Nehruvians to the Indira Gandhi, Morarji Desai, Lal Bahadur Shastri, again Indira Gandhi, Rajiv Gandhi, Narasimha Rao, BP Singh Chandrasekhar, I.K. Gujral, H.D. Dev Gowda, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, then Dr. Manmohan Singh for the 10 years, then again since 2014 it is the NDA led Narendra Modi. So since in India and independence ties with the United States have weathered Cold War era, distrust and estrangement, India's nuclear programs. Whatever the status conditions of the India-US relation is different from the post-Cold War. There was the shadow of Cold War. Definitely, there is impact. If you look at the American sides, Reagan, Carter's, Bush, Clinton, George W. Bush, Obama, and right now Joe Biden's. If we look back during the Cold War up to the until 1991, the containment of communism was the major part of the US foreign policy. During the Cold War, India's relations with the US were cultivated close, whatever the India is moving towards the USSR, helping separate for non-alignment movement, where US objected and rejected to either pro-US or pro-Soviet. So it was the new path after the independence of India, the non-alignment, the distance from the both power blocs. So this is the threat, Soviet threats to the Americans across the world. Ideology, geopolitical and strategic containment and military containment. So for these Americans trying to 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 to, to engage countries through the treaty, military blocks, agreements, many more things. Cold War military alliances is there. It so reflects the blue color, so is the NATO partnership, the Soviet is the red through, and the green, the neutral countries who are emerged as the independent nations after the end of the Cold World War II. Warsaw Pact, many more things is there. If you look at evolution of India's foreign policy, shaped by the experience is balancing competing interest during the Cold War. India became one of the foundest member of the non-aligned movement during the Cold War, defined much of its interest Nehru and Indira Gandhi's period. Yes, there is some challenges for the Indian foreign policy making to how to convince the US, because during the Cold War, India faces 2-3 wars, especially after 1962 with the China, then 65 with the Pakistan, 71. It was that led to the emergence of the new state in the South Asia, that is the Bangladesh. So Indian leadership also encouraged the role of international organizations, UN, regional organizations, to protective role for de-escalating tension between the two superpowers. But India attained independence over the last six and half decades, expanded its influence worldwide, primarily through the diplomacy and trade. Right now, it's the military and strategic significance is there. The first Indian Prime Minister post-independence, Nehru, visited US on October 13, 1949. Pandit Nehru meets the US President S. Truman, Henry H.S. Truman, with a multi-week tour to the United States. This trip precedes India's formal proclamations of the neutrality in developing Cold War, in which that take the leadership within the non-aligned movement. This set the tone for US-India relations throughout the Cold War, creating constant within the relationship as well as opportunity for Delhi and the Moscow, the Washingtons. Whatever the apprehension of the United States about the India, it was almost doubt the clarified by the first Indian Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru during the first visit after the independence. So this is the picture. The first Prime Ministers visited United States. Second landmark milestone is the Martin Luther King, who was the great follower of Mahatma Gandhi. Inspired by Mahatma Gandhi, non-violent struggles for the national independence, the US civil rights leader Martin Luther King arrives in India for month-long tour in 1959. He meets Prime Minister Nehru, Gandhi's families, scholars, many more. After the returns, King say the commitment to non-violence resistance, calling it the most potent weapons available to oppressed people in their struggle for justice and human dignity. It message for American society during the Civil War after the Martin Luther King returned from the India. The third milestone, it is the President Eisenhower visit India in 1959, December 9. President David Eisenhower is the first serving US president to visit country. Mr. Rajendra Prasad, the first president, prime minister, many more dignitaries in India, and also address the Indian Parliament by the first American president who addressed the Indian Parliament after the independence. There's a lot of agendas that the first times Americans supported the late foundation of Indian Institute of IIT in India for the technological advancement institutions. But there is a also bone of contentions after the during the Indira regime's 1974, the first nuclear test. Americans not agree with India's positions because India was not ready to sign the CTBT, NPT, whatever the non-proliferation treaty is there. India declared its nuclear capabilities after the first nuclear test in 1974. In 78, the Jimmy Carter's the visit India in 1978. That time, President Neelam Sanjeev Reddy and the Prime Minister Morarji Desai also welcomed him and also addressed the Parliament, Indian Parliament. It was the sixth stage. Then also Morarji Desai in reciprocal visit to the United States in June. 1982, it was the really difficult time for the India when Indira Gandhi visited because this is the last decade of the Cold War. Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi meets with the President Ronald Reagan during the state visit to improve country's strength relationship. Whatever Americans think, India is the pro-Soviet. So that's why that time George W. Bush led the high visit to the Delhi after the Indira visit to the US in 1982. In 80s, 90s, unfortunately, 1984, there is a assassination of Indira Gandhi's. 84, Rajiv Gandhi was there. He's trying to improve the relation with the US. But this is the last time for the end of the Cold War and the disintegration of the Soviet Union. So the post 1991, there is a lot of dramatic changes in Indian economic policies, the foreign policy. It is the Prime Minister Narasimha Rao who led the new path for Manmohan Singh, along with the Manmohan Singh, for the economic reforms, adopting the international rules, cooperation through the WTO and IMF. Americans favors because India as a natural partner of democracy. There was a moment in 90s when the collapse of the Soviet Union cleared way for universal political and economic order. Globalization were the second factors that defined the whole discourse of India's US cooperation, which is the market economies. Closely connected globalizations, Narasimha Rao visited in US along with that time 92, the elected president of United States of America. If we look at some of the cartoons, how they projected the India's image of economic reforms, economic economic models, many more things, because the pre 1991 it was the different closed economy, but post 1991 is the open economy, moving towards the open economy. Manmohan Singh was that time the finance minister. August 27, 1991, finance minister addressed the IMF. So these cartoons makes for the jokings, the things about whatever the changes, the dynamics of economic reforms. There is a use of the soft power tools of the soft powers Americans uses to refer to country ability influence through the non-military forces. India was the favorite destination, US side. Again, there was the coalition era for the Indian politics, but it is the tenure of the Atal Bihari Vajpayee. He initiated for second nuclear test in May 11, 1998. That was the second challenges for the Indian diplomacy and foreign policy, how to maintain the relation with the United States. But you know, the US intelligence organizations many fears moved to spark the regional nuclear arms race. It is the American perceptions about the India's. So that's why the American president Bill Clinton's recalled American ambassador to India. President Bill Clinton also imposed economic sanctions required under the US law. But after the 1 year, there is a beginning of sparking, there is a new confrontations, new challenges for the Indian military forces, the Kargil War in 1999, where one of the most eventful 4th of July, it is American diplomacy, where Bill Clinton's engaged in sensitive way, they call for that time Prime Minister of Pakistan, Nawaz Sharif, to visit US, but Indian Prime Minister denied to visit for the talk with Nawaz Sharif before ending the Kargil War. Finally, India won this Kargil War that we call today the Kargil Vijay Divas, observed as the India's victory, July 26, commemorate of the sacrifice made by the soldier and the Kargil War. It is known as the Operation Vijay, was launched by Indian Army to recapture the Indian territory from Pakistani intruders in Kargil Dras sector in 1999. That time, India was not surrendered to Americans' pressure. That time, Vajpayee called to Bill Clinton's and invited in India discuss about the what kind of the new situations emerging in Indian foreign policy, the security dynamics there. So, Jaswant Singh Talbot table talk was very significant for improving the relations. So it is the March 2000, the first American president after the Cold War visited India. We can say since 1978. The first time the Bill Clinton to India, moving different cities. So it is the indications Americans, it is the indication of India's economy begin to take off trip, include the shift in Washington regional orientation away from Cold War alliances with the Pakistan. So it was the picture. So this was the scenario of Jaipur during the 2000 Clinton visit there. There is definitely bilateral meetings that time, the Vajpayee and others. So, but 2001 there is a new events, the 9/11 terror attacks in America initiated war on terrorism. India was the first who supported the Americans' view there. So this is the framework to design the whole India-US relations. In if 2005 India and US signed the new framework for the India-US defense partnership 2005. for the close cooperations there. Landmark civil nuclear deal in 2009 also. President Bush visit India in March 2001. Then that time the Prime Minister Manmohan Singh was there. Then Prime Minister Singh also state visit to 2009 to the US. Address symbolic importance trip there. The bilateral enhancing bilateral relationship. This is the scene for American President and the Indian Prime Minister in Washington. But after Manmohan Singh is the 2014, it is the Narendra Modi and Obama there. Then Trump is there. Trump arrived India. A strategic partnership is there after the 2005 because there is two threats: the China growing military power, territorial claims, many more things there. US has worked fashion alliances for those countries to attempt containing China expanding influences there. If you look at the recent visit, what are the outcomes? The two sides announced the new deals involving high-ended defense cooperations, semiconductor industry instruments. We can say the partnership to quantum in advanced computing and artificial intelligence deal for co-production of jet engine in India. White House called it trailblazing. It involved unprecedented level of technology transfer with India. India decision to join 11th nations mineral security partnership for the critical minerals. India moved to sign the 27 nations armaments accord for the cooperation in space explorations. Prime Minister Modi visit to Washington, culmination of the new Indian clarity about pragmatism in dealing with the United States. So this is the many fruitful outcomes of this visit during the last month by the Indian Prime Minister, deeper cooperations between the India and the Washington. So we can say finally India and US partnership is growing and in the context of strategic cooperations in the military, economic and defense cooperations in the 21st century. So this is the joint collaborations for the two democracy matter for direction of 21st century where we are moving towards. Thank you.